and this hangout is live on air. Well, hello and welcome to the Cliffs List webinar for today. And our special guest is Tony Newton, who is a dating coach and pickup expert from Vancouver, BC, but originally from Montreal. And I've known Tony, I guess, now for quite a long time, since he first showed up at a Lair meeting many years ago. And Tony, why don't you give us a little introduction about yourself, what you do, how you do it, and your background and this sort of thing.
Hey, Cliff. Yeah, I remember the first time I met you was in a McDonald's, actually, and you were screening out members for the Lair meeting. You're screening people to make sure that nobody was a member of the press. That was back in the day when the press wanted to infiltrate the Lair meetings. The media was very curious about the pickup community.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I was just a snot-nosed newbie trying to overcome some anxieties. Yeah, so I moved to Montreal, actually, from Vancouver. I'm originally from Vancouver, and I moved to Montreal specifically to learn pickup because I had a lot of social anxiety. I had a real problem with my fear of not just talking to women, but public speaking, just meeting strangers in general. Everything gave me a ton of anxiety and panic attacks, and I realized I needed to overcome this, and Montreal was the place to do it, just because Montreal has such amazing nightlife. It has such a diverse scene, so many diverse types of people, and I went there to learn, and I met you at the first Lair meeting, yeah, and I eventually ended up talking at 5 or 6 of those meetings. But over the years, I formed my own company. I used to work for a company here in Vancouver, but I didn't like the way the guy was running his company. I started my own company, which is absoluteability.com. And I've written 2 books on pickup since then. I've taught a cold approach pickup in day game and night game in now 4 countries and 9 different cities over the last 6 years. I've been a full-time approach coach and dating instructor for about 4 years now, and I've made love with many fine women from all over the world, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, that's good. How about giving us a little bit of more elaboration on, I guess, the evolution of Tony the newbie to Tony the dating coach?
Yeah, the Tony D story. So I actually wrote a novel all about this called 1,000 Tiny Failures, which you guys can get off my website or you can pick it up from a link from Cliff. But how it happened was, when I was about 12 years old, I developed gynecomastia, which is the enlargement of the breast gland. And I had man boobs. I had, sorry, headphone came out. So I had enlarged nipples. I was kind of like that Robert Paulson guy from Fight Club. And it fucked my self-esteem up really badly. And when I was 27 years old, I got liposuction. I finally said, fine, I'm just going to get this dealt with. But I still had this incredible anxiety with women. And so the first thing I ever saw about pickup was a documentary about a pickup artist called Charm School. And it was Juggler. If you remember Juggler, Wayne Elise Juggler, he had a documentary. And I thought that was fascinating, that you could actually go out and cold approach women and you could become like a lot more confident and better and have better game. And you could actually improve that. To me, right away, I knew it was true. I wasn't a skeptic at all. I got out there and I started working right away at approaching women here in Vancouver. And I realized that Vancouver, I had too many ties to my social circle, too many people that were telling me that's a weird thing to do. You shouldn't do that. We like you the way you are. Why are you obsessed with women and all this stuff? People telling me it's creepy. So I said, screw this. I'm going to change my entire life. I'm going to move to Montreal, where I don't know anybody. And I really advise guys to do that. If you want to make a big change in your life, you should go somewhere where you don't have old anchors holding you to your old personality, your old way of being. And so I went to Montreal and I went out and I practiced. Before I even joined the community or found your Lair, I was going out 5 nights a week, 5 days a week, and practicing on my own. And it was terrifying. I was really bad at it. But I was going to bars mostly around St. Laurent, up and down St. Catharines, and Old Quarter, and just forcing myself into approaches. and I was really bad at it. But after a while, after about 3 months, I got my first lay. I met a girl at a party, and it seemed so easy and natural at the time, but she didn't know I'd been practicing. I wrote about that in my novel, that very first encounter as well. And so after a while, I started going to these layer meetings, and I would go out with these guys from the layers, and I realized that I had a lot more experience than almost everybody. I thought I was going into these groups where there were going to be all these gurus, and there are gurus and really talented guys that come through these meetings, but most of the guys were really not taking a lot of action, and a lot of them were really stuck. And I just sort of had a knack for helping people. I had a knack for explaining things. I had a real gift for it. And so I started taking out guys for free, just out to bars and pushing them and helping them, just teaching them what I knew, which wasn't a lot back then in 2007. But I got really good at teaching because of that, and I got good at game. I ended up sleeping with a lot of women, mostly from bars and nightclubs and parties. And then I moved to Vancouver, and I worked for this guy who was a real kind of a scumbag. I wrote about him in my novel too. I called him Richard Gee. That's his character name. But he was kind of ripping people off. He wasn't giving people a lot of value in his coaching around 2009. And I thought, fuck this shit. I really, sorry for my language, but I really believe in integrity. And that's why I started Absolute Ability and started teaching my own methods. And now in 2016, I mostly teach day game. I still go out at nighttime, but I'm 38 years old, and I really like going out here in Vancouver out to the sunshine and approaching women, going direct in the daytime. Or, you know, I do a lot of indirect game, but I teach direct first of all. And I still do like going to bars and parties, but I'm totally a different person from what I was when I was, you know, kind of a messed up, insecure guy back in 2007. The pickup stuff, just like, you know, changes people's lives. I mean, it goes so much beyond pickup. It just transforms you. And it did for me.
Okay, well, how about giving us a little bit of specifics in terms of, you know, what brought you more success compared to, uh, you know, when you were not having success, basically. You know, like you did, I think you're doing things now that are a result of experience and trial and error and this type of thing. And, you know, how about some specific examples of things that you might do now that you didn't do before, you know, that work?
I think it was really a matter of just internalizing the life experiences that the difference between now and then is back then I used to really think about strategy a lot. I used to really think about game as a system of steps, or as it being something that, you know, like a maneuver I had to apply and execute, whereas now it's just who I am. I actually just wrote an article about this where I was saying now 10 years later I don't really think about pickup. I don't really think about women. I don't really think about game. I don't really go sarging. It's just who I am. So I feel about the same amount of fear and trepidation about approaching a woman as I would of taking a drink of this coffee. So this is like how scared I am of approaching 5 hot girls. That doesn't mean they're going to want to hook up with me or sleep with me, but the difference is it goes from being something that I used to do to who I am. And I mean, there's still, of course, inside of seduction, there are still tactics, just like there would be a tactic if you were playing baseball, for example. You would know that if you put a certain spin on the ball when you throw it, it's going to react differently with the bat. So when you kind of head towards mastery, you start to have a greater control over these small aspects, and it becomes unconscious competence. So now I have a lot more unconscious competence, but I'm not so obsessed with getting women all the time now. I don't need to go out and go sarging and do these things all the time in order to meet women. It's just sort of who I am, which is where ideally, I think that's what most guys want. They don't want to have to, you know, have a lot of fear and trepidation or have a lot of memorized routines or anything. And you know, new guys are wondering, like, how can I get to that stage? And my answer has always been experience. I've always put experience above all technique and tactics. And most guys, they just don't practice enough. They just don't go out enough. They don't go to parties. They don't go to bars. They don't do day game. They might do it on the weekends or dabble in it at a cafe once in a while. But they're not putting in the work like I did I was literally like, you know, you've read a lot of my old field reports and stuff, but in the time in Montreal, for the 2 years I was there, I was literally going out 7 nights a week. I was seeing this shit in my dreams. And the guys that get really good at this stuff, that's kind of what they had to do. They sort of had to dedicate that level of time and involvement into learning. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm still going to push you for some more specifics because the thing is that now when you walk up to a woman, you probably have different things going on in your head. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's nothing going on in your head, but and you're more reacting in a more spontaneous manner. But at the
Yeah,
same time, that's also being filtered through your experience.
it's true.
Uh, and the thing is that when you uh, look at guys who've gotten good, there's definitely been a change. And if somebody was to watch you back then and watch you today, they're going to see a lot of subtleties that maybe you probably know of, but you may not be thinking about or not be specifically aware of. But there's probably some specifics that you can talk about and also the other thing that's what I wanted to mention is that you talked about experience as being the big difference, but the thing is that just going out and approaching women, I mean, you can eventually sort of deaden your fear of rejection, I guess, or your hesitation by just constantly just going and going and going. But
Mm-hmm.
that's not enough to get some success. That's going to you've got to have a change in what you're doing from what was not working to what is working, and that's what I want to focus on is learn what works today for you that didn't before, or maybe that did a little bit and you stepped on the gas and got it going faster.
Okay, okay.
That's
So
what
you want to talk about game is what you're talking about, like a specific thing that I've been working on, or hmm. You know what I've been doing a lot of? I've been telling women to contact me. So this I found has screened out a lot of my flakes. And when I meet a girl, often I'll just say, "Look, find me on Facebook. My name is so and so on Facebook, Tony D." And I found that when you get women to invest in finding you, you have a lot stronger base when it comes to getting dates because they've already started investing in you. Whereas I used to be really persistent over texting. Texting is the thing I hate the most out of this whole situation in 2016. And I really think smartphones are. Some people are really keen on online dating and smartphones and stuff. For me, it's a boon because I'm all about in real life. So what I did to counteract a lot of my flakes is I've been using this technique where I say, "Hey, add me on Facebook. It's Anthony Newton. That's my non-pickup Facebook." And the girls that actually contact me, it's like a 50% or lower flake rate. Another thing I've been doing over the last few years is really looking at the numbers game. And I've really made a strong correlation between the guys who put in the numbers and the guys who don't, and the results they get with the hotter girls. And a lot of guys on these forums nowadays, inner game is like a really big thing. People are really into talking about holistics, talking about being in the now and being present. And I'm a big fan of all that stuff too. But back in the day when we first started, there used to be a real focus on he said, she said. So you would go on a forum and say, "Hey, she said this to me. What would you guys say in return to that, in response?" And that's kind of lost. Outer game has not really been focused on for the last 10 years, and that's something I've been kind of thinking a lot more about is the numbers game, and outer game stuff, like actually what to say in response to certain situations. So I'm getting a lot of clients to email me these conversations or record their conversations and going over that step by step, because what to say is one of the biggest problems most guys have, and I've never really had that problem because I've always been a very verbose guy. But I did realize there were patterns in speech that can cause women to become more attracted to you, specifically sex talk and breaking rapport or using polarizing conversation. That's been something I've been working on too. But the numbers game, what I noticed is over the years, there's been a strong correlation between, in the day game guys, the amount of women that they try to number close or go on instant dates with to the amount of girls they sleep with. And it's always down to about 1 out of 10. For some reason, there's this correlation between 1 out of 10 in all these social situations where it's like in sales, if you go and you knock on 10 doors, at least one, at the very minimum, they're going to open up and check out your product, right? So that's something I've been really interested in. But specifically, you know what? Cliff, you've known me. I've always been a very holistic-minded guy when it comes to this stuff. I really like to take my clients out and just see what they're made out of. I just put them in situations, and I don't give them a lot of instruction. I don't like to give people, my students, too much intellectual material to grasp onto until they come back with experiences. Because, like, I've always taught Jeet Kune Do, which is you react to the environment instead of trying to control the environment. Instead of going in there with a fully laid out plan, I like to see what's happening inside that situation. Like, how is she reacting to me? Is she reacting better to me being a nice guy and kind of polite and submissive? Some women don't like dominant guys. This is kind of a myth that you have to be this dominant guy. Some women, they won't even pay attention to you unless you're a douchebag or kind of arrogant or coming out as over the top. Some women, if you're too physical right away, they're gonna say, hey, don't go there, because maybe they're part of the subculture that's all really afraid of rape culture or something. Or if you're not physical with them, they won't get attracted to you at all. So creating escalation spikes, that's something that I've focused on a lot for years. I mean, I've studied everything with this stuff. Specifically, as far as examples are concerned, for myself right now, if I said I was out there like partying all the time and doing a lot of game, I'd be lying. I'm mostly working on my books and seeing my girls that I meet casually. Most of the girls I meet are from coffee shops, where I'll be working in a coffee shop, and my greatest pickup line is, what are you writing? Because women are always writing on their laptops wherever I'm hanging out. And I've found it easy to connect with women who are writing because I'm a writer. We have something in common. And a lot of my game these days is all about my vibe. It's just vibe. It's like if I like myself and I can put out this vibe that I'm not nervous, I'm a little bit more confident than your average bear, and I can make small talk with people, that's usually enough to pique interest in women. And then I give them my contact instead of asking for theirs, and I tell them, usually specifically, text me at 6 p.m. a 4-word poem. Here's my number. And I don't ask for theirs. Or I say, find me on Facebook and send me a funny cat picture or something like that. And that's kind of how I've been meeting a lot of women lately, is just by giving out my information and giving them opportunities to meet me. And it's been pretty cool, man. I've been invited to a lot of parties lately and met a lot of new women because of this. And I'm not going down that pursuer road. I think being persistent and pursuing women will get you a lot more dates, honestly, but it can also be really exhausting in the long run and burn you out if you're dealing with like a lot of flake culture and you're really trying hard to get with some of these girls. And I've been texting girls for months, and then you don't hear from them over and over and over. That can get to you. So to protect myself, I've gone into this mode where I give out my contact information, and it's been pretty powerful, actually.
Yeah, there are definitely a few people out there that advocate always giving out your number and not taking theirs ever.
Yeah.
So I can certainly see that that's a good strategy, and it's probably something that I've done myself, quite a bit. But I think the problem is when you tell a lot of guys that, they say, well, whenever you give out your number, girls don't call you.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a little subtlety involved in making yourself enticing enough that they do call you.
Well, sometimes the problem with, you've been in this game for a long time. You've talked to all kinds of ladies, men from all over the world, and you know that the better that you become in a skill, the harder it is to teach, because like naturals have a hard time relating to guys who are studying pickups. They say, why don't you just be yourself? And sometimes I find it hard to relate to newbies, even though I have to deal with them on the weekends all the time. I get newbies, right in front of me every weekend that I'm working, and they always have all these questions and they want all this information. And I say, well, first let's put you in front of a girl and see what happens. Because I think that with pickup, you should have a strategy, but really it's about you presenting your best product. You are a salesman and you're presenting your product. But at the same time, if you don't knock on that door, she's not going to open the door. If you don't ask to come inside the house, she's not going to let you inside the house to show your products. And a lot of guys, they're really afraid of just asking or leading to the next step. So for newbies, the most important thing I've always said for these guys is to actually just go out and try to get not just experience of approaching women, but like when I teach, I say, okay, you're going to approach the girl. You're going to last at least 2 minutes. You have to make keno. And it's usually not focused on verbal game in the beginning because it doesn't matter for most new guys. You're going to last 2 minutes because if you turn around and she hasn't told you to go away, I'm going to spin you back and put you in that situation again, because that's what most guys do, is they eject out of the situation. So after 10 years of doing this stuff, for me to go into the meta of it all, it's sort of difficult for me to go and explain meta situations to men unless they have very meta questions. If they have a very specific question, then I can answer it. But you know, seduction, it's like explaining air. It's like, what is air? How do you breathe? Right? What happens when you breathe? I mean, I could, if I was a biologist, I could talk about everything that's going on in the human body. And I think talking about seduction and pickup is almost the same way. So, I mean, if someone asked me a question like, okay, so how do I approach 3 girls that are at the bar and they have their backs to me and they all have drinks and they're not looking outwards into the room, how do I meet them? Like, that's a very different question than I have approach anxiety. How do I, in the daytime, I want to meet this girl who's going to work and I have approach anxiety and I can't move my feet even. How do I deal with that? They're both really different questions, right? So it's tricky for new guys to understand that this whole process of learning game, of improving yourself, it's not something that you're going to conquer in 2 months or 3 months. It's a lifelong process. And 10 years from now, you might, because you've seen this before, Cliff, how many guys go through this process of learning game only to stop 2 or 3 years or 4 years in after a bunch of success and go on the forums and say, pickup is stupid. The pickup community is lame. You guys are all lame. You don't need this stuff. And they turn their back on the community. And then they go and they start their own blog saying, like, I'm not a PUA, I'm a whatever coach, and you should just be natural. It's sort of the same process for everybody in that regard. Going from newbie to intermediate to advanced, you just become who you really are. You become normal. I always say learning game is a process of normalization. Now, guys who have been doing this stuff for 10 years and they're still having a hard time getting dates or getting laid and stuff, I don't think that it's necessarily tactics or anything that they need to focus on. I think it's probably something else that's going on in their life that's blocking them, and it could be something else other than that. As a newbie, you should just be going out 7 nights a week and getting as much experience as you can, and I really stand by that.
Well, tell us about how you deal with certain sticking points that guys have.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, I'm sure you come across guys that are I guess there's, you know, performance sticking points, and then there are probably mental sticking points, such as you know, they're afraid they're too ugly, they're too short, they're too bald, they're whatever, too old, you know, and you know, and then there's also performance ones where they just they perhaps get too nervous when they go up to a girl.
Yeah. The looks thing, I get that quite often because you get guys that think their skin color is the wrong color, or they think they're not tall enough, or they are whatever their insecurity is, they focus on that. And I remember reading one piece of advice from, there's this guy named IG, I think it's IJJJI, from the seduction forums. And I've never met this guy, but I don't remember anything he's written in the past except this one thing. He said, like, avoid mirrors. And when I read that, I was like, that's fucking brilliant, because everyone's got a little bit of an insecurity. Sometimes you might look in the mirror and think, wow, that's a handsome devil. But other times you're going to look in the mirror and go like, God, my hair is really bad today, or I'm overweight, or I'm too old, or I'm too brown. But that one little saying, avoid mirrors, it really helped me in the early days, because it helped me to stay away from my own insecurities, right? Even though I'm such a dashing and handsome fellow, you know, but everyone's got their insecurities. And if you avoid the mirror, then you won't destroy that mental image you've spent so much time building up for yourself. So if I get an Indian student, for example, and he's like, he has a really thick accent, and he's like, oh, but I do not want the girls to be thinking I am just fresh off the boat. I'll say, no, you know what we're going to do? We're going to play up that accent, and you are going to own that accent because that's who you are, right? So if you're short, you're going to own being short because you have no other option. You can't change that, and you can't go around in your mind believing egoically, pinging people, wondering what they think about you. If you're shorter guy, and you're talking to a taller girl, and you're wondering in your mind, I wonder if she would even give me a chance because I'm kind of short. That's going to come out in your verbals. You might start, supplicating a little bit. You don't want that kind of stuff. So the easiest tactic is to not look in the mirror, which I say is a metaphor for being in the present moment. Because if you're in the now, like a dog, a dog's just running around. You've seen ugly dogs and good-looking dogs. They act almost the same. Some are more confident than others, but really dogs are always in the moment and in the now. And the more that you learn how to become present, the better your game will be, because you won't be self-reflecting all the time, which will come out, that will manifest as insecurity, which is really unattractive to girls, insecurity. So that's something that it's pretty universal for every guy who has any sort of insecurity. You should practice meditation. I mean, the first time I meditated was at a layer meeting with Steve Pickus in Montreal, and I wrote about that in my novel too, that whole situation. I read a lot about Montreal in that novel. You guys should all buy it off Cliff. 1,000 Tiny Failures. Boom. Yeah, meditation. The first time I meditated, I found it really interesting. And I have to do it almost every day now to keep from going insane myself. But if you do a lot of pickup, you'll learn what it means to be in the present moment. Because if you were thinking about the future or the past when you're in a set, the girl will sense there's something off about you. Because cool guys, they just live in the now. They're having a good time. Oh, they're talking to a girl. Like the way I teach men to approach women in the daytime, it comes off as not premeditated. Some guys they teach you to run up and stop a girl and say, stop, I had to come meet you. But to me, it seems like I teach guys to do it so that you come up beside them. You're walking beside them, and then you get just a little bit ahead, and you look over your shoulder and you say hi. And you wait for them to acknowledge you and say hello back. Because then it seems more like it's something natural that just happened in that moment. You didn't premeditate and run across the street to stop her. I have done that. I mean, I've done that, and it's funny, but it can be exhausting for her emotionally and puts her on the spot, and it can be the same for you or the student. In this way that I've been teaching day game, it seems more like you were just going about your day, and you turned and you saw a hot girl and you said hi, because that's what you would do in the moment if you met a hot girl in a Starbucks or at the mall or at a party, rather than making a big deal about it. And it hooks harder. I think it hooks really well if you can pull that off. It's harder to learn, but then running up and saying stop. But if you're startling people, or another thing that guys do to creep girls out is they say, I just saw you back there, and they'll point and they'll be like, I had to meet you. And right away the girls get creeped out every time. They're like, you saw me back there and you followed me all this way. Whereas if you just say, hey, I like that dress you're wearing, it looks really good with your shoes, or something, whatever the line is that you're using, it comes off as more in the present. Yeah, that's so important, being present. And you have to, because you have to learn how to control your emotions if you want to be good at game. You can't be really nervous, because if you come off as really nervous, it'll it manifests in your body language in a lot of funny ways, specifically with eye contact. A lot of new guys can't hold eye contact, or they'll fiddle while they're talking to the girl, or they'll be scratching their face, or doing all these strange things that are actually a manifestation of what's going on inside them. That'll turn the women off. They'll just go, oh, he started so confident, but I can tell he's faking it because of these body language issues. And when you learn to become present in the moment, you can actually tell your heart rate to slow down. You say, with breathing techniques, heart rate, calm down. And when that calms down, this problem with the mind, it's like a bunch of gears that are not aligned. They're kind of going, they will click into place and start flowing smoothly once you learn how to control your heart rate. And so these are connected. Your heart and your mind are connected. So, but if you learn to meditate, you're actually learning how to get your mind going smoothly. That'll make your body work smoothly. And if you can learn to slow down your heart rate, that'll make your mind move smoothly. And then all of a sudden, you know what to say, you know what to do, you're funny. And that's when technique comes into play. That's when when you can learn how to become calm in a situation, flirting with really hot girls. Then you can learn how to do little spins and play little games and thumb wars and whatever. You can learn how to move her from one part of the bar to the next and build rapport like that and do all the pickup artist techniques. For me, the techniques and stuff, they're like the icing on the cake. They're like when you're playing like a fighting game, that's like the special move. You could have won without the special move anyway. But that's probably the most important thing for new guys. And the second most important thing for new guys is to have a strategy. Now, I said don't have a strategy, don't use tactics, but at the same time, if I go out at night, I'm not going out to practice my game. I'm going out to pull. If I'm not going out with friends just to have fun. So I know where I'm going, and that would be my place. And I know what time I would like to be there, about 2 a.m. at the latest, because I'm old. But usually it's more like 4 or 5 if you're into night game or you're getting phone numbers. But a lot of guys, they go out and they're talking to girls and they're flirting and they might even get a makeout, and then they'll end up leaving that girl and wandering around the bar all night because they don't have a plan. And I tell guys, when you go out, every single girl that hooks you, try to get her out of the bar and back to your place. Fuck the game. Like, don't even worry about spending an hour with her. Just say, hey, I've got a bottle of vodka back at my place. Why don't you come check it out for a bit and we'll have a drink there, save some money, and then come back to the party. And most guys never ask. They just don't assume that that a woman would be into leaving with them. And so many girls will. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them will say, yeah, sure. Or you say, let's go to an after party, and then have the after party with you and a couple friends and go to your house. So many guys don't even have a place they can have an after party. So they're going out night after night after night, and they're like, I'm not getting results, because they're not actually trying to pull. They're not just telling the woman what they want to do. Women are a lot of them are just like men. I mean, they're different in that maybe they're a bit more emotional. Their lifestyle is different, but they're thinking the same things we are. They're just under different societal pressures. So they're not usually going to be the ones that go out and say, like, I'd really like to get laid tonight. Could you please invite me somewhere? But if you go out with a plan, either go to your house or her house or a hotel or a car, but you just lead the woman. You lead her. You tell her where you're going. You tell her what to do. A woman that likes you will follow you. She will give you the odd objection, like, my friends. She says, my friends. You go, well, you can text them. Here. You can even do what they did I saw some movie where you hold up your ID and take a picture of it. I mean, I wouldn't do that, but you know what I mean. Just don't give her objections before she objects to you, and just lead her down the path of where you want her to go. And when I teach that to guys, so many guys, they start pulling, they start scoring when they know where they're going. Yeah.
What was there any specific, I guess, trigger that changed you to getting more success? And for example, I guess what I'm talking about is getting physical with women.
Yeah, actually, two things. One was Mihao. He had a video. This was back in the day. I wrote about this when my first. It wasn't a lay. I got a blowjob from it. But Mihao put out this video where he did this weird thing. And if you guys don't know, Mihao is this old PUA guy who, I don't know if he's around anymore, but he did this thing where he put his hands up and he got a girl to lock fingers with him, and then he did some kind of cold read on her. And I thought, well, that's great. I'm gonna go try that tonight. I went to this party, and I forgot what he said. So all I did was I saw this girl, and I went up and I tried this a couple times with a couple girls, and most of them just looked at me funny. But I saw one girl standing by herself, and she was putting out all of the signals that she wanted to be seduced. She had isolated herself in the room. She was all smiles with open body language, looking around at people. And I went up to her and I said something like, oh, it was some stupid line. I'm a big improv guy. You know me. I like to say ridiculous things to women and screen out boring girls, because I need to have like an intellectual connection with like the women. I said something about her being a cat as her, it was like her spirit animal, and she thought that was funny, and she put her hands in my hands. And I started doing this sort of physical thing, but then I just ended up holding her hands. And that's become pretty normal for me to just walk up and just hold girls' hands. Like I'll just be talking to a girl and I'll just put my hand out and I'm holding her hand. And that's really normal. Before I had to do this technique to make that happen. So that really was a huge epiphany for me. And the other part of this, the other thing that triggered this epiphany was a book by this guy Sleazy. He's called Sleazy, and he wrote a book about club game. And in this book, he was terrible. He didn't really sleep with many women at all, but he practiced a lot, and he explained all of the mistakes he made going out to bars, because he wasn't good at talking, but he was a good dancer. And he went out and he was really physical with all these girls, and he would talk about picking them up and swinging them around. And at the same time, Ozzy, I think, was talking from RSD, was talking a lot about physical game. And so I thought, this month I'm going to work on that. And I went to bars every night. And I just went to the dance floor and I tried to dance, and I just tried being physical with women. So I would reach out, get their hand, pull them in onto my waist, use my leverage of my body. I'll just stand up so you can see this. I take like her body and like lean it against here and then lean back. You can, if you use that leverage, you can, if you use, sorry, I don't know if you could hear that, but you use the leverage of your waist and her waist to lean back, and you can pick up almost any girl or man, doesn't matter how big they are, and lift their legs off the ground. And lifting a woman's legs off the ground, it's really exhilarating for anybody really, but for women it's a very dominant thing. It's a very fun and playful way to just sort of show her that you're powerful. And so I started practicing that and everything, throwing women over my shoulder and walking them around. And I got kicked out of a bar for that once because the bartender or the bouncer didn't like that. But I just spent a few months working on that, and then it sort of became natural for me to be physical now. Nowadays, I don't really think about it. It's sort of, it kind of blows guys' minds too in the daytime when I get a lot of students and they think, well, I can't touch a woman in the daytime. You know, that's assault or rape culture because we're so brainwashed. And if you see my videos on YouTube, you see that I get very physical with these women right away. We're hugging, they're holding my arm. And it's really about you being present in the moment as you make these physical moves. Because if you're thinking about it, like my daytime boot camps, I get guys to put their hand on a girl's shoulder as they're talking. Now, if you're talking to somebody and you put your hand on their shoulder, that's just a reassuring gesture. That's like, yeah, cool. But if you look at your hand while you're doing it, it's creepy because you're premeditating, right? Oh, time to touch, time to do this. Where, then it becomes weird. So you have to be physical, to be really physical. You have to be doing it because that's who you are, and you're not seeking permission, which sounds really kind of non-consensual, but it happens so in such a smooth way that everything is consensual. Everything is consensual when you're good with physical game. People don't object to it because they enjoy it. Women enjoy it. Women, just like if you take a woman that you're attracted to and you press her body against you, that feels really good. It also feels really good for them. There's a reason there are people out on street corners giving free hugs. Those free hugs people. I have a theory that they might think they're doing something good for society, but really they're doing it for themselves. It makes them feel good to go out and get hugs. You get high off hugs. So you can hug people all day and all night long, and it really, it's a normal thing. But also, it's like if you press a hot girl's body against you, she might not even be hot. So you took a chubby girl who you're not totally into, but you get her rubbing her boobs on you, you're going to become excited, and you'll start thinking about sleeping with her. So a lot of women, you can dance with women. They might not be that attracted to you, but you got her rubbing on you a little bit. And after a while, she starts to think, well, I feel excited. I feel sort of turned on by this guy. Maybe I do like him. He's not really my type, but I'm getting horny. So physical game's amazing for that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, do you find that there's much difference between what you do day game and night game?
Yeah, it's quite different. But I mean, at nighttime, you're dealing with all kinds of crazy chaos. You have, well, it depends on where you go. If you're going to lounges and bars, it's not the same as going to clubs or student pubs. But daytime, it's usually one woman and one guy. So you would see usually there's groups too. You can approach groups, but usually you would see one girl walking down the street or in a coffee shop or wherever, and you can go up and just have a dialogue with her. Whereas at nighttime, you might very rarely find women that have isolated themselves. Usually, if women isolate themselves, it's because they want to get picked up. I can see them. I have like Terminator vision, but most of the time, you have to go into groups. Be social, meet a lot of people, and do like mystery method is actually really useful for nighttime stuff. Whereas mystery method is pretty much useless for day game, in my opinion. Daytime, women are really looking to see that you're a normal guy, that you're not weird. Whereas in the night, you can be kind of weird and crazy and zany, and you're rewarded for it. It's a lot higher energy most of the time. Not like jumping up and down energy, but just you want to be louder, you want to be more entertaining, you want to be funnier and wittier in the nighttime to stand out from all the other guys, because the women are there to look at the marketplace. They're out there looking at their options, right? And so if some girl's looking to meet a new guy, she's going to want to find the most fun guy, the most intelligent guy, the best looking guy, whatever. In the daytime, she might not have had any guys approach her with any skill in a month. A lot of guys will come in and say like something indirect to them and then not follow through. They don't know how to make a statement of intent and say that they find her attractive or spike her attraction with a joke or some keynote. Most guys will come in and say a girl's looking at soap, and they'll go, "Oh, so you like soap, huh? I like soap too." And then they'll talk about soap for a bit, and then he won't sense that she likes him, and he'll kind of bounce out. Women don't even know they're being flirted with. Whereas at nighttime, they know that guys are trying to pick them up. So it is different. It is different, but like anything, there are so many variables. At the same time, if you get good at day game, it's going to help you with night. And if you get good at night game, it's going to help you with the day. Like in daytime training, I get guys to spin women on the street, to just go up and offer your hand, and you take her hand and you spin her and like a dancer in the middle of the daytime on the street. And so many guys are like, "Oh my God, I have to do this." And I go, "Yeah, and you have 2 minutes to make it happen. I'll start a timer on my phone." And it's always really funny to watch them flip out and try to do this task, which is actually really simple. It's as simple as it would be in a nightclub. It's just, in a nightclub, you just tap some girl on the shoulder and offer her your hand. And you actually get a lot more rejections in the nighttime than you would in the daytime for this if you don't have good body language and stuff. But you take her hand and you just tell her what to do, spin. And so many guys, this is almost a lot harder for them than going up and just saying, "Hey, I thought you looked hot. I had to meet you." It's really, really difficult. But it's at the same time, it's something you can do in both day and nighttime.
What have you found that really works in terms of, I guess, becoming more smooth with women?
More smooth. Well, I found that it was mostly learning, like I said, how to control my heart rate. When I first started, approaching a woman would give me such an adrenaline spike, and this is the same for all guys. It gives them an adrenaline spike. It's a rush, and so your heart gets going, and that manifests in the physical sort of the jitters, the stuttering, the sweating, the weird eye contact stuff. And it's not smooth because you're obviously not in control of your emotions. You don't want to be more nervous than she is. Some women will find that endearing, a little bit of nervousness. They'll think, "Oh, that's cute. He's not necessarily a player." But if you're too confident, they might think you're a player. But smoothness is definitely just based on my experience level. It's like you can watch a good guitar player, and he can be smoking a cigarette and having a conversation with somebody while doing like a badass jazz riff, and you go, "Wow, that guy's a real gangster. He really knows how to play." And you could take a new guy who can play Smoke on the Water, and he has to use all of his concentration. You can tell he's really focused on his guitar. Bum, bum, bum. You're always going to want to watch the jazz guy. So how do you become that jazz guy? So you can also take someone who's a professional guitar player, but he's a dork. So he's got no style, and all he can do is play other people's music, right? He can just play. You've all heard this guy playing Metallica riffs. He's playing like Enter Sandman or something, and you're like, "Wow, he's really good at playing Enter Sandman," but he never improvises. he never comes up with anything. Whereas if you see him and you see another guy who's improvising, but he's improvising at the same skill level, but it's unique, you're going to become a lot more hypnotized by that guy who's able to improvise. I teach all my students how to improvise, and it's something a lot of guys are afraid of doing. But being smooth, it's all about calibrating to the moment and improvising and knowing what to do in the moment. And like, women appreciate that too. They know, they can tell what virtuosity is. They can tell what skill is. They can tell when you're faking it. They'll still be impressed by it, but like a cover band never makes it as high as an original rock group or whatever, because people are impressed by creativity. That's what smoothness is to me, is being in control of your emotions and also being able to improvise rather than just mimic. But if I think of like a smooth guy in the community, you might think of Zen. He's someone who just comes off as being cool, right? Like he's just a cool guy. But you talk to Zen, you don't sense nervousness off Zen about anything really. I mean, no, I don't know him personally, but I've just seen a lot of his stuff. Yeah. It's really like a energy thing. It's about having the correct energy flow when you share with people, that you're present with them. And I know I use that word a lot, but I think that it's a really important concept.
Well, let's move along a little bit here. Tell me about, women that you meet that you maybe perhaps want to get more involved with. Like, what would you do anything different with one that you have a special attraction for, or that you want to maybe turn into a girlfriend? And you know, it's, I don't really know much about your, I guess, your relationship history, but have you been have you spent a lot of time in relationships, or they've been mostly short-term things? A lot of the guys who teach this stuff, partly because of what they do, have a real hard time to maintain a relationship.
Yeah, my job is fucked with my relationships a lot. I mean, in A Thousand Tiny Failures, I actually talk about the last real girlfriend I had. I have a lot of short-term relationships. I don't mean like one night. I mean like 6 months. And usually I'm seeing 2 or 3 girls at the same time, and they're usually aware of each other, but they're not always cool with it. Some of them are, some of them aren't, but I don't give them a choice. I'm so picky, like when you get into pickup for a living, you become really picky about the women that you spend time with. I know some guys who are just straight up sex addicts and they don't really care. They live and breathe pickup. They're just out meeting women all the time, and they're usually like, I don't want to say anything about taste, but they're not usually the hottest girls. These guys who are like sleeping with 400 women, they're kind of just sleeping with whatever they can to get their notch counts up. I've always been a lover of women. Like, I'm more about having relationships with women, not necessarily like monogamous 3-year relationships. But in A Thousand Tiny Failures, I talk about the girl who chose me. And I've always seen it as the girl, when she wants to be your girlfriend, she will choose you and she will let you know very in short order that she wants to be your girlfriend. And it's usually up to her skill level and my willingness to be in a relationship with her in that way. So the last girl I was really monogamous with, she was just perfect for me. She's what I wanted. I mean, I was 31 and she was 19 at the time, but she was beautiful. She was smart. She was ambitious. And I wasn't teaching at the time, but I went with her for a long time. But eventually I started teaching, and she didn't like my job, and that caused a lot of drama in our relationship. And I basically chose the job over her, and I don't regret that, because it's allowed me to travel all over the world and date other women and stuff. But I still think back, like, what would have happened if I stayed with her? Because she wasn't cool with me seeing other women. So since then, I've been with women that I'm just straight up with. Look, this is what I do. It's not who I am, but this is my job. But my own personal belief, whether I did this job or not, is I'm not going to commit to you just because you're a girl and I like you. You know, that's something we're going to have to work into. But the girls I found that really want a relationship, they will lock you down. They'll, like this girl, she gave me an ultimatum. She was like, you don't see any other women or you don't see me. And I thought, I'm cool with you for now. And that was 2 years. And after 2 years, I was antsy. So I think for certain guys, being monogamous, it's just not a choice. Like they'll never be monogamous, and other guys they're serial monogamists, and some guys mix it up, and I kind of mix it up. I try a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but I don't think there's a way to necessarily make her your girlfriend. She has to choose you. Like that's ideal. It's like as a man, you want the women to see your value, and a lot of women they won't know your value until after they start dating you or fucking you, basically. How many times have you been with a woman and she'll be kind of hot and cold with you, but eventually you get to sleep with her if you're persistent enough? And that's the normal case for most guys with hotter women. The women will eventually concede and start fucking you, and then they'll backwards rationalize how much they like you after they sleep with you, because they have those girly emotions that pop up after sex. Amazing for us guys that they do this, because we usually want to keep seeing them if we get a hot girl. And that's when you have the most power, is if you can give her good orgasms and make love to her, and like a professional, then she will start to rationalize that she loves you, and she doesn't want to feel like a slut. She doesn't want to feel like she can't have you for herself. She'll start to also wonder, if you're this good of a lover and you're this confident in meeting her, how many other women are going after you? One thing you can really do to lock a girl down to make her your more full-time girlfriend type situation is let her see you being attractive around other women. Go out to a party and talk to some other women. No, don't go out of your way to pick women up, but make contact with other females and let her see women being attracted to you. And she will change her ways from being aloof to all of a sudden being a lot more available. And that's what you want. You want her to see that you are on your path, that you're attractive, that you've got game. And then she'll start to think, well, he's not normally the kind of guy I would be with, but there's something special about him. I'm watching a show right now that's all about this hot girl's life on Netflix. Fuck, I'm just trying to remember what it's called right now. Love. You should watch Love on Netflix. It's about this nerd and his dating issues and this hot girl and her issues. And it's really like, it's a very real, to me it's a comedy, but it's a very realistic portrayal of a hot girl's life and the decisions that she makes. Like, she's rationalizing whether she should date this nice guy because all these bad boys have fucked her over and over and over, but she can't help being attracted to them. And everybody wants to party with her, everybody wants to get her high, everybody wants to have her time. So she's not texting guys back, literally, because she's always busy talking to people, going out, shopping, working, partying. And this guy's sitting at home just bummed out because he's not getting his text message, looking at his phone. And it's a great show that really illuminates this process of what goes into a woman's decision-making process when it comes to who she's going to choose to be her boyfriend or who she's going to fuck. She fucks her boss because she thinks she might get fired if she doesn't. She feels really bad about it, but she understands that that's the marketplace for her. And she fucks her ex-boyfriend because he gives her the emotions that she wants, even though he's a grown-up man boy who lives with his mom. She keeps banging him, and he's a cokehead, but he's a bad boy. And so it's a really great show for looking at these sort of diverse answers to diverse questions, because this stuff is not so black and white that you can give one strategy.
Well, that's a interesting direction. Do you find that you've got some kind of a specialty with certain clients, like certain guys that, certain guys just sort of really respond to what you teach compared to others that maybe don't?
Yeah, the guys that really like didactic learning methods, A to Z methods, they're not really my biggest fans. The guys that hire me, I have like a 95% close rate on my bootcamp sales. Like a guy will contact me and say, yeah, when's your next boot camp? And I'll say, well, when are you free? I don't really work like that. I go on demand. I'll say, like, next weekend it's $1,200 Canadian. Okay. And I'll talk to them a little bit and close the sale, because the guys, they read my blog, they see my interviews, and they align with what I'm teaching. Whereas other guys will come to me and they will be, if they're skeptical and they don't really know, like, they want to know what my system is. And I tell them that I'm more an intuitive teacher. I'm more of an intuitive teacher. I teach intuition. I teach you to rely on your intuition and your instincts, and I push your comfort zone rather than giving you a didactic A to Z system. I think that's the word, didactic. Linear. Whereas I'm nothing against linear systems. It's just I've never been a linear thinker myself. I'm more of a, yeah, an intuitive teacher. So guys that are into that intuitive style, they tend to come to me. But most of my clients are not like hard case newbies. Most of my clients are guys who already have their shit together. Mostly, I'm not cheap, right? So I've got junior coaches for the guys that can't afford me, but they usually come to me. They're usually entrepreneurs. Most of them are IT, not IT. They work as engineers, software engineers. I get so many software engineers. And a lot of these guys, they aren't nerds. Like, they have good fashion sense. They're in shape. They have high paying jobs, but they just have approach anxiety and they don't know what to say. And they don't really align a lot with stuff like mystery or old school sort of pickup philosophy, because they have sort of a nice guy syndrome and they want to learn this in a way that's not creepy, right? So that's another thing. Most guys think that this stuff's creepy and they don't want to be creepy. It's a social conditioning. So I talk a lot about social conditioning. I talk a lot about ego. I talk a lot about these sort of more holistic pickup methods. And also, I'm funny. I talk openly about sex, and I'm not like a pushover nice guy, blue pill guy either. So I get these kind of guys that are real talkers. They want someone who's just going to be real with them. And I'm very much, my teaching method is very much about results. So I get a lot of guys that are really about doing the work and not really analyzing theory too much. But like, my whole philosophy is like, let's get in field right now. Let's get you in front of women and get some data. And guys that like, that's what they want. They don't really want to sit in a lecture hall and go over 6 hours of slides. I get you out in the field right away. Like, let's start talking to girls. My whole teaching method is like 20% theory, 80% action. And if you look at my blog, it's almost all motivation. It's very little of it is tactic, because I just think that there's a time and a place for tactics and stuff, but I've tried so much stuff and I realized what it really came down to was being a salesman. That's really what it is. Pickup is sales, man. You make your product as attractive as possible and you try to close as hard as you can. And there are little tricks and stuff you can do, and you know, NLP helped me a lot, but I don't rely on that stuff very much. I mostly screen for women that like me. There's something about me that they like, and then I try to stay on that bull. I try to stay on the seduction and make it happen. I try to keep them texting me. I try to keep them with me in the room, and it's for so much of it's about logistics and emotional control and dealing with just bullshit interruptions, or getting her to just meet you and just getting her back to your house, rather than you know, using like micro loop theory or some kind of crazy philosophy that's just, you know, redundant information. I find a lot of this stuff that these guys that think about pickup so much as being, they're just thinking about it too much and they're not doing it. They're not out doing it. And so the guys that they hear me saying this on my blog over and over and they agree with me, those are the kind of guys that I attract.
So you're mainly pushing on action.
Yeah, work ethic. I'm all about work ethic. I'm all about action and, you know, positivity and like reflection on experiences, rather than predicting, rather than philosophizing. That's why I don't hang out on forums much anymore. Like, I'll go on forums and I'll post, but I don't spend a lot of time talking to guys unless it's like, this is what happened, let's analyze it, rather than like, what would you do in this situation, which is, you know, you see that a lot online. What would you say in this situation? It's not the way it used to be. Like, we don't have those conversations online very much anymore. But back in the day, that was a big thing. And that's why I developed this counter idea of, instead of talking about what might happen, like, let's talk about what happened last night. And that's one of the reasons why my posts got so popular too, is because I was one of the few guys that was putting in a lot of work ethic. And I know a lot of guys that started when I did, and they read 5 times more theory, but I spent 5 times more time out there actually doing it. And so I ended up being a teacher, and they didn't. So that's why I really push that. And so, you know, I think for a lot of guys, this stuff is entertainment. It's like their favorite TV channel. They go to their favorite seduction guru and they get the kind of good emotions, and you might find a little tip in there, but most of them come out no different than when they started, because they're just not going out and meeting women and they're not trying to close. Some of my favorite gurus right now are Arash Divazar. I really like Arash because a lot of his message is it's more about self-improvement and getting out there, and he talks a little bit about female psychology and what women like what kind of person women want to be around. That kind of stuff I'm interested in. It's not my specialty to talk about female psychology, mostly because I have a lot of female readers on my blog, and I have a lot of haters that read my blog, and people they're just looking for me to say something sexist so they can attack me. But one-on-one with guys, I'll talk a lot more about female psychology, and I do think that's useful to understand the way that women are. But at the same time, if you explore female psychology in a red pill sort of realistic way, you kind of start exploring the dark side, which necessarily doesn't help you in seduction. To be like, women are fickle, women are like this, to say these things, it doesn't help guys get laid at all. So, having a game plan and taking action and using a strategy that works is a lot more powerful than studying like another psychological tactic to convince someone that you're more attractive than you actually believe that you are, or a new Kino technique or something like that. That kind of stuff, it's neat, but it's like, really, I call it PUA porn. It's like, it's just the porn. It's a way to waste time online. And I do it, everybody does it, but I mean, how many RSD videos can you watch before you realize that the whole message of RSD is to go out, be physical, take action? I made, billion-dollar industry out of that advice. And if you watch a lot of their pickup videos, like I've seen a lot of RSD infield videos, and a lot of infield videos I've watched them, and one thing my big epiphany coming out of paying $300 to go to a hot seat was they're not doing anything different than I'm doing. They're talking to women, and they're using their intuition mostly in the moment to know when to escalate. They're doing a lot of physical game. You're doing a little push-pull, a little teasing. Most of that stuff was in David D'Angelo. When guys come to me and they tell me they've never read a pickup book, I make them read Double Your Dating. And if I can get a hold of 60 Years of Challenges book, I don't have it anymore, but that's a better book after David D'Angelo, because David D'Angelo's book can make some guys a little too cocky. They're a bit too cocky funny. But I don't think there's a lot of information out there that's really going to change the landscape. But every once in a while, some new guy will come out and say something that we've forgotten. That's all I found that pickup advice is now. There's so many pickup teachers out there, and dating gurus and whatnot. But once in a while, somebody will articulate the same concept that I haven't heard in years differently, and I'll go, oh yeah, right? Or one guy will be like, you should always focus on closing, focus on pulling, and that's his big selling point. Or another guy's like, you should focus on loving women. That's Zan's thing. Love women. It's like a mindset thing. Right? And now the red pill is really popular, and it's their whole thing is like, let's look at what's wrong with society and fix our broken society so that the women are different in the future, which is kind of interesting, actually. I find that stuff interesting, but it's not necessarily anything different than what we were writing about 10 years ago on the forums. It's just now they've branded it.
Okay. Well, I think that maybe now would be a good time for me to open up this discussion to anybody who wanted to ask you some questions, who was listening in. We have a few people online. If they want to bring up some questions, let's open the webinar to the listeners and see if they have anything to ask you.
Nice.
So if you have something, just step forward and say something. I've unmuted the chat, and you can either type something down or you can just speak. It probably will come through, and let's see what happens.
Don't be shy. If you only have one testicle and you want to know if women are into that kind of thing, guys with only one nut, you can ask me about that.
Well, we're not going to wait too long, so if nobody wants to step forward, we will end the webinar, but it would be nice to get some conversation going with somebody else if somebody wants to say something.
What have you been up to, Cliff? How's the list building going? You've been in this game forever. You're OG. You are full OG. You still in Montreal?
Still in Montreal, working on everything that I've been working on, still just pushing away. But this is an interview about you, not about me today. So let's keep it
Uh,
on topic. All right, it doesn't look like anybody's going to step forward, so I'm going to thank you very much for your time and for all the insights that you've shared here today.
it's always
And
a pleasure.
if somebody wants to know more about you, they can go to your website, which is absoluteability.com, if I believe is that
That's
correct.
right. That's right.
And hopefully, you'll get some reaction out of this. And I guess one thing I do want to mention to anybody um, who buys anything from Tony, if you send both Tony and myself an email saying that you did that because you've found out about him either through this or some other method through Cliff's List, we will send you an extra bonus product. Cliff's List will, just to make that clear. So, just keep that in mind. Actually, it's something that anytime you buy something through Cliff's List, we will send, and you just let us know about it. Send us a copy of your emails about that, and also notify the sponsor. We will send you an additional free bonus gift. And some of those are pretty good materials that I think you'll be quite pleased to get your hands on. Anyway, Tony, I want to thank you again for your time, and hopefully we'll be hearing more from you in the coming months and years. And again, thanks again.
Live long and prosper.
Thanks.